Junji Ito is an award-winning Japanese manga creator and cult favorite writer and artist in the horror genre who has been gaining a lot of international renown and mainstream popularity these last few years, winning over audiences all over the globe, even from those who wouldn't normally read manga. Influenced by the great Japanese horror creators before him like Kazuo Umezu and Hideshi Hino, and also Western influences such as H.P. Lovecraft, H.R. Geiger, and Salvador Dali, Junji Ito would go on to create some of the most horrific, nightmarish images and stories ever committed to ink and paper. He is a master of body horror, suspense, and other disturbing supernatural phenomena, but at the same time, he perfectly captures the ordinary fears and anxieties of everyday people, be it about struggling with uncontrollable acne or dealing with the inevitability of death. Uzumaki is probably his most famous work, first published from 1998 to 1999, containing some of his most iconic imagery that has become synonymous with his name. The multi-chapter story revolves around a small town called Kurozucho, where high school student Kiri and her recluse boyfriend Shuichi begin to witness strange occurrences that seem to be related to a particular pattern, the spiral. The citizens themselves, one way or another, become paranoid or obsessed about spirals. For example, Shuichi's parents both die from suicide under the influence of this spiral curse. His father's body is found impossibly contorted into a spiral shape inside a circular coffin, and his mother stabs herself in the ear after discovering that the cochlea inside the human ear is the shape of a spiral. Other cases of spiral obsessions or strange happenings includes Kiri's own hair being possessed by deadly spiral curls that hypnotizes whoever sees it, a slowpoke of a student with a growing spiral on his back eventually turning into a human snail, and an attractive classmate with a scar on her forehead that grows into a spiral vortex which ends up completely engulfing her like an imploding black hole. By the story's end, time itself is affected by the spiral curse, and the whole town eventually succumbs to the evil of the spiral. Kiri and Shuichi, the last remaining survivors of this mysterious calamity, accept the futility of their hopeless situation and decide to embrace until their bodies have wrapped each other like a twisted spiral. The spiral of depression. Junji Ito's stories typically begin with the ordinary, but are quick to descend into madness of a supernatural and monstrous kind, ending too often with mysteries left unresolved. From the opening chapters of Uzumaki to its bittersweet conclusion, there is always a sense of dread, both physically and existentially. The character of Shuichi, particularly, reflects the dreadful effect the spiral has upon the people's emotions and behaviors. After the death of his father in Chapter 1, Shuichi gradually looks more and more starved and sleep-deprived, with his hair growing shaggier and longer, his cheekbones becoming more pronounced from malnutrition, and dark swollen circles have formed under his eyes due to insomnia. Throughout the story, he seems to be in a constant state of fear and paranoia, showing erratic manic behavior and, of course, the signs of depression. According to the current Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM-5 for short, physical symptoms for depression include tiredness, exhaustion, lack of energy, disturbed sleep patterns, moving or speaking more slowly, restlessness and agitation, changes in appetite and weight, and lack of self-care. Psychological symptoms include persistent low mood or sadness, loss of interest or enjoyment of life, emotional numbness, feeling hopeless or helpless, constantly anxious or worried, irritable and intolerant of others, low self-esteem, indecisiveness, and lack of motivation. We can clearly see that Shuichi has many of the traits and symptoms of depression, which leads him to withdrawal and isolation from friends and society itself. In the later chapters, Shuichi eventually enters a catatonic state, obsessively repeating the phrase, "This town is going mad." In the 21st century, depression has become an epidemic. Over 300 million people are suffering worldwide, making depression the leading cause of ill health. And it's no longer a phenomenon that happens in midlife. At any age, depression can hit, with the average age for the first onset of depression happening in the early teens. Depression is very much like a spiral, like falling into a black hole that sucks the joy out of living and leaves you unable to function normally. It's a constant experience of feeling hopeless, helpless, and worthless, which can persist for weeks, months, or years, interfering with daily life, affecting how you feel on the inside and how you live your life on the outside. Psychologists and mental health professionals have often described depression as a downward spiral, with thoughts, emotions, and behaviors spreading and reinforcing each other. This spiral can come in different forms. There's a thought-emotion spiral, where you're in the grip of negative thoughts, which sends your emotions plummeting. This has the effect of making your thinking even bleaker and your mood sinks lower as a result. There's the social spiral. You feel down so you don't go out much, so now there's nothing distracting you from your low mood and you're less likely to reach out for support, and you end up feeling even more down. Then there's the physical spiral, where you're exhausted, your body hurts, and this makes you feel low and sluggish. You can't summon up the energy to do anything physical to give yourself an endorphin lift, so your mood spirals further down. And lastly, there's the pessimistic spiral. You're expecting the worst to happen. As a result, you believe that whatever you do won't make much difference to the situation, so you give up. You feel helpless and sink into despair. Like Shuichi, you find yourself at the bottom of the pit at the very end of the spiral, where time has just stopped and the feeling of dread and hopelessness is eternal. The good news is, a spiral doesn't have to only go in one direction. Thankfully, there can be also an upward spiral that can lift you out of depression and raise the quality of your life with happiness and fulfillment. According to positive psychology, a fairly new branch of psychology that cultivates happiness, emotional development, and personal growth, depression can be overcome by increasing positive emotions in order to trigger the upward spiral and get onto the path of flourishing. So it happens that when you feel good, things are more likely to go well. A few ways to increase positivity in our emotions and mental well-being includes practicing gratitude, savoring the moment, acts of kindness, connecting with loved ones, developing your strengths, mindfulness meditation, physical activity, and generating optimism. The practice of gratitude, for example, produces serotonin, which leads to an improved mood, which can help motivate you to further positive action. This can trigger the upward spiral out of depression. In the end, instead of a spiral downfall into a life of feeling empty, through positive psychology, we can be lifted and carried by the upward spiral that can lead us to a life of happiness, meaning, and purpose. Before Junji Ito became a manga creator, he worked in dentistry. One day, he had to make the fateful decision to either continue in his promising career as a dental technician or fully embrace his awesome talents as a horror manga artist and storyteller. Thankfully for us, he chose to pursue his passion for writing and illustrating original comics, and, as one critic put it, traded the real-life horror of dentistry for that of horror fiction. he found his happiness, meaning, and purpose. And so can we. Whenever a spiral or powerful mysterious force enters our life, not unlike the one that came upon the town of Kurozucho, it's up to each individual how that event will shape us. If we let negativity get the better of us, we can end up looking like this girl, completely drained and consumed until nothing is left. Or, with a little positivity, we can truly overcome any challenge and fulfill our fullest potential.